Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever been walking alone at night and just felt that sudden, unexplainable chill run right down your spine? Well, today, we're unpacking a terrifying local legend that literally perfectly captures that exact human fear. We're going to look at a highly specific encounter, one that turned a simple, everyday walk through the woods into the birthplace of a permanent village myth. Let's just dive right in.
Then he felt someone standing behind him. Just hold on to that feeling for a second. We're going to break down the exact anatomy of this specific moment of pure terror. How does a totally normal evening just suddenly turn into a nightmare? And how does the brain even process a threat that it can't quite comprehend? That is exactly what we're dissecting today using our source material.
All right, Section 1, The Forest Path, a normal evening walk. So it all begins with a man named Rahul. One evening, he's simply returning home. His route is just a regular path cutting right through the dense trees of a local forest. And what's absolutely crucial to understand here is the utter normalcy of this situation. This wasn't some ghost hunt or an expedition. It was literally just his commute. The massive contrast between this mundane, everyday task and the sheer terror that follows, that's what makes this narrative so gripping. And the rapid escalation here is just terrifying. Look at how quickly this moves. One moment, it's a calm evening walk. Then, in a flash, two glowing red eyes appear in the trees. His adrenaline obviously spikes. He turns in a panic, only to see absolutely nothing. And then the climax, where the entity just vanishes. Notice how incredibly compressed the sequence is. The whole architecture of a suspenseful encounter relies entirely on speed. A peaceful walk dissolved into sheer, unadulterated panic in literally a matter of seconds. Which brings us to Section 2. Glowing red eyes, a sudden threat. Sensory details are absolutely everything in an encounter like this. The source text specifically highlights that suddenly, right out of the dark, dense foliage of the trees, these two red, glowing eyes appear. Just think about that stark visual contrast for a second. The absolute pitch black of a forest at night, violently interrupted by this piercing, unnatural red light. It's like a primal trigger for the human brain that immediately screams, danger. Now think about the psychological fake-out happening right here. He turns back in total fear, but the path is completely empty. This is honestly a masterclass in tension. Because for a split second, Rahul's brain probably tried to rationalize it, right? Maybe it was just an animal. Maybe his eyes were just playing tricks on him in the dark. Finding no one there creates this momentary, totally false sense of relief. But as we know, nature abhors a vacuum. And in a suspenseful encounter, an empty path is rarely empty for long. Let's see how this builds in Section 3, Mysterious Dark Shadow, a Chilling Presence. Because that tiny moment of relief, it's instantly shattered. Right at that exact moment, he feels the undeniable sensation of someone standing right behind him. The entity has closed the distance. It is no longer just some visual anomaly far off in the trees. It's an immediate, physical presence invading his personal space. And the sheer terror of that realization is, it's paralyzing. So let's actually break down what we're dealing with here. The entity clearly uses the environment, hiding among the trees with those glowing red eyes. But crucially, it casts a physical feeling of presence. Rahul truly felt someone standing right behind him. Yet at the exact same time, it manifests as a dark, mysterious shadow that is capable of vanishing instantly. It operates perfectly right on that razor-thin boundary between a physical, tangible threat and a terrifying spectral illusion. Which brings us to the climax of this immediate confrontation. Imagine the sheer, overwhelming dread here. Rahul slowly, agonizingly looks back, and instead of an empty path, he finds a dark, mysterious shadow staring directly at him. The eye contact is key here. It acknowledges him. He's no longer just an observer of something weird in the woods. He is the target. It's the ultimate moment of vulnerability. And then we pivot abruptly into Section 4, Vanishing like Smoke, the impossible escape. Just as the tension reaches its absolute, unbearable peak, the supernatural element just takes over and completely shatters the laws of physical reality. This standoff doesn't end in a physical attack, but rather an impossible retreat that leaves the victim's reality entirely fractured. Let's walk through these final frantic seconds. First, you have that intense stare down. But in the very next second, the source text explicitly states the shadow vanished like smoke, not ran away, not stepped behind a tree, vanished. Pure survival instinct kicks in, and driven by absolute terror, Rahul just runs rapidly for his life and somehow manages to reach his home. This whole sequence perfectly captures a massive adrenaline dump, a desperate flight response triggered by something completely unexplainable. Now moving into Section 5, the village's terrifying tale, a permanent myth. Let's zoom out from Rahul's isolated horror story and look at the broader impact. Because an event like this, it doesn't just end when the survivor locks their front door. It seeps into the entire community. We transition from a singular, terrifying encounter right into the birth of a permanent piece of local folklore. The raw facts of Rahul's survival become the foundation for a much, much larger cultural legacy.
You can clearly see the evolution here. It all started as this one inciting incident, Rahul's singular night of terror and his desperate escape. It was just one man on one night, but it evolved into something so much larger. Even today, the villagers maintain this ongoing fear that the red-eyed shadow actively roams that specific forest at night. This is exactly how a single survivor's harrowing tale becomes a permanent warning, an enduring local myth that literally dictates how an entire village interacts with that forest after dark.
Which leaves us with one deeply unsettling final thought to consider. Is that red-eyed shadow still waiting for someone in that forest today? Because if the villagers are to be believed, Rahul wasn't just hallucinating, he uncovered a dark truth hiding in the trees. So the next time you find yourself walking near the woods at night and you feel a sudden chill or that unshakable feeling of being watched, you might just want to remember Rahul's story. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious and, maybe a little cautious out there.